Are Trump's claims about genocide against Christians in Nigeria true? Is he sincere about saving Nigerian Christians? Does Trump really care about Christians in Nigeria? And can Trump actually save Nigerian Christians? Welcome to Naked Truth. For about 2 weeks now, President Trump of the USA has repeatedly threatened to invade Nigeria, all guns blazing, in order to blow away terrorists who have been persecuting and murdering Christians in the country. Now, are Trump's claims true? First and foremost, there is no doubt that there has been a serious problem with terrorism in Nigeria since about 2012, thereabout. And the main problems and threats have come from Boko Haram, ISIS, West Africa, Fulani herdsmen, so-called bandits, and several other nameless Islamic terror organizations, as well as so-called unknown gunmen, kidnappers, and sundry criminals. The victims of this terror threat and activities have been Nigerians of all descriptions, Christians, Muslims, especially Shia Muslims, non-Muslims, and especially in northern part of Nigeria, in particular the northeast of Nigeria, and in the south as well. So-called bandits and Fulani herdsmen have terrorized communities and people going about their normal businesses. But there is also no doubt that some terrorists have targeted Christians, churches, priests, worshippers, Christian villages and homes, as well as farms. There is no doubt that thousands of Christians, some estimates give it as over 60,000 since the year 2000, or it could be more. So many thousands of Christians, many priests, worshippers have been killed or murdered for nothing except because of the fact, not just that they're not Muslims, but they are not the fact they're Christians, but because they're not Muslims. Because for terrorists, a Christian in Nigeria is actually every non-Muslim. So there is a fact that Christians have been killed, and many terrorists have targeted Christians. I'll give you links to the reports about casualties in the video description. There is also no doubt that the government of Nigeria, especially the previous government of Buhari, had not done enough to stop this menace. I haven't done enough to bring to justice those who were apprehended by security agencies in Nigeria. In fact, many of those apprehended were released by the government. We're giving money, we're giving things in the name of so-called rehabilitation, while those displaced are living in camps, while those they murdered, their family members, were not compensated. There is a perception and the reality that the governments have failed to prosecute the criminals who are terrorizing Nigerians. Even the current government hasn't, it seems, done enough to checkmate the terrorists. So for many people who have been at the brunt of insecurity, especially in the Middle Belt area, where Christians have faced serious persecution and killings, you can't blame anybody for saying there was a genocide against them, even though we might not know the motive of the killers. So, in that respect, there is substance in saying that Christians are being targeted. So, having established that there is a problem of insecurity and a problem of terrorism, which involves also Christians, does it mean then that Trump was sincere in his claims? Well, I don't think so. A U.S. Department of State report as late as December 2024 has not alleged Christian genocide in Nigeria. The Department of State observed in its report that there is a general problem of terrorism and insecurity in Nigeria, which has affected civilians, military, government targets, and every Nigerian, especially in the north, in the northeast, in the middle belt. It also observed that the federal government has been trying to solve this problem by increasing attacks on the terrorists using American Toscano jets. But he says the problem is still there. However, he hasn't said that, he hasn't found that there is genocide of Christians in Nigeria. And this is the USA Department of State report, who should be advising Donald Trump and from whom Trump should be getting his information. Second, why I think Trump wasn't sincere was that there are many countries which are allied to the USA more than Nigeria, and which has US presence, in fact, which has US intervention, in which Christians have actually faced genocide. And Trump hasn't done anything and is not threatening to do anything to help those Christians. The first example is Iraq. In Iraq, which has some of the oldest Christian communities in the world, and since US invaded Iraq in 2003, it is reported that Christians have been facing massive existential threat to the extent that about 83% or more of the Christian community in Iraq has been destroyed, or has vanished, or have fled the country. And that the Christian population in Iraq has dwindled from 1.5 million to just about 250,000. USA is heavily present in Iraq, and their invasion of Iraq has contributed to the near extinction of Christians, and Trump hasn't done anything about that. Syria, USA government from Obama since 2011 sponsored terrorists, rebels to overthrow the government of a secularist Bashar Assad, who had protected minorities and Christians in Syria for decades. Now, the jihadist government that was sponsored by USA and its allies has overthrown the government of Assad, and now Christians in Syria, again among the oldest Christian communities in the world, are facing serious persecution and attack and genocide, according to reports by several news outlets, including USA outlets as well. The links to this are in the description. USA government, Donald Trump, has not done anything to help the Christians in Syria, even though their plight is directly linked to the actions and activities of America, including Donald Trump himself. Number three, in Gaza, Palestine, the Christians there are almost wiped out. And Gaza, Palestine, has the oldest, or some of the oldest Christian communities, including in places that Jesus and his disciples supposedly walked, supposedly preached, and supposedly lived. According to Palestine Church Affairs Committee, Israel has destroyed the Christian presence in Palestine and continues to do so, bombing churches and all the institutions of the Christian community, to the extent that Christians in Gaza make up now only 1.2% of the population, when in fact they were about 12.5%. So since Israel took over many parts of Palestine, it says that the population of Christians has dwindled from about 12.5% to now 1%. That is near extinction. That is genocide of the Christian population. But Trump has not done anything to help them. So it seems to me, from the evidence, that whilst we have problems in Nigeria, Trump is not being sincere about his stand. Does Trump even care about Christians in Nigeria? Let's look at evidence. I'll give you some evidence to suggest that he doesn't. One, USA and Trump are the biggest supporters of Israel in the destruction of Gaza, Palestine, including the destruction of the Christian community there. It is clear that Gaza has been leveled, and the leveling has been done with 100% US support in terms of money and the military equipment. Two, USA has contributed to the Boko Haram menace in Nigeria, to the menace of ISIS West Africa, and to the menace of other terrorists in Nigeria. Why? Well, Al Qaeda was created with the assistance and enablement of USA in Afghanistan. They grew in Iraq with because of the actions and the invasion of USA in Iraq. That is not open to question. And then they further grew and expanded in Syria because of the actions and activities of USA. Remember, USA sponsored terrorists they called moderate rebels who were fighting to overthrow the government of the country, and they succeeded. And so, whilst there was no ISIS in Syria or Al Qaeda in Syria or Iraq, when US entered Iraq, there was, excuse me, Al Qaeda. There was ISIS. They entered Syria, there was ISIS. They entered Libya, overthrew the government in Libya, and then there was ISIS, Al Qaeda, Al Nusra, and all these terrorist organizations in Libya as well. And now from Libya, many of them ended up in Nigeria, in Chad, in Mali, in Niger, in Burkina Faso. So there's at least an indirect link. And go and Google it. A lot of the military hardware being used by ISIS were US hardware. Tanks, armored vehicles, the guns, even uniforms. So USA has helped since the so-called war on terror began in 2001. The menace of terrorism has skyrocketed all over the world, including in Nigeria. In fact, A USA congressman spoke in the floor of the Congress, House of Reps, that USA NGOs, including USAID, have been sponsoring Boko Haram by giving them hundreds of millions of dollars every year. That allegation has not been satisfactorily dispelled. A former head of the military in Nigeria also alleged that foreign powers were sponsoring the terrorists in Nigeria. Furthermore, USA and Trump were the ones that sponsored the terrorists who overthrew the government of Syria, which government now persecutes and kills Christians. As we speak, the leader of that government, a certified terrorist who was deputy leader of Al Qaeda, who was the leader of ISIS, who is now the leader of Syria with the help of USA and its allies, is or was in Washington just yesterday, dining with Trump. How is he going to fight ISIS and Al Qaeda? Because remember, ISIS West Africa and Boko Haram are affiliated to Al Qaeda and ISIS. How is Trump going to fight them when he is dining and whining with the leader of ISIS, Al Qaeda in Syria, when he sponsored them into power? Further, despite the clarity of the genocide in Gaza, which has wiped out almost entirely the Christian community, which has leveled almost entirely Gaza Strip and everything in it. USA and Trump has not for one day classified that as genocide, even though the ICJ, i.e., the International Court of Justice, UN bodies, human rights organizations, legal experts, and every objective observer has said that what is happening or what has happened in Gaza was a genocide. Trump has not said so. In fact, he persecutes those who make the allegation, including UN, including the International Criminal Court that filed indictment against the Prime Minister of Israel. So, since Trump is not being sincere, moreover, Trump is threatening to bomb and invade Venezuela, a wholly Christian country, 95% of them Catholic, in order to take over their oil resources and to impose a government favorable to the USA in Venezuela. And in so doing, Trump has been bombing boats, fishing boats in the coast and waters of Venezuela, not minding that those in those boats were Christians or could be Christians, without any charge, without any. So basically, jungle justice. This is not a man who cares about Christians. He's a man who cares about his interest and the interest of US geopolitics and economy. Okay, even if we put aside everything that has been said and Trump and America were to invade Nigeria, all guns in place, would that actually help? Not just Christians, but Nigerians as a whole. The answer is no, because examples and precedents will show and have shown that American interventions do not help, but they make things much worse. A few examples will suffice. Afghanistan, 2001 to 2021, USA invaded and took over the country, destroyed infrastructure, millions killed, and then they left. The Taliban went back into power and inherited billions of dollars of American military hardware, including fighter planes, tanks, and all sorts of military hardware, leaving the Taliban stronger than it was when they were chased out of power in 2001. Iraq, 2003, invasion, destruction of the country, 1 million people dead, much of the country destroyed. Now, terrorist networks multiplied in the country. And then from there, they spread all over the world, including into Syria, into Libya, into Nigeria. When in fact, before 2003, there was no terrorist organization in Iraq because Saddam Hussein wouldn't allow that. Yemen, USA invaded with Saudi Arabia and other allies, and they caused a humanitarian disaster in that country. According to the UN, the biggest at that time, about 2014 to 2020, the biggest humanitarian disaster in the world. To today, Yemen is still struggling to come out of it. Libya, 2011, one of the most developed, most prosperous country in Africa, debt-free, happy. But then America led the invasion with France, UK, and other allies to remove Gaddafi from power and threw that country into chaos, after thousands have been killed and much infrastructure destroyed. Libya is still struggling to come out of it. There's no government in Libya today that controls the country. Militias all over the place. And from Libya, terrorists have spread across Africa, including Nigeria. Syria, I mentioned Syria before. From 2011 until last year, is it this year? The USA have been sponsoring, equipping, training Islamic terrorists to remove the government of the country, and they've succeeded. And now in Syria, terrorists are in power, and Christians and other minorities are being persecuted. There are other examples. So, what conclusions can we make from this? We have a problem of terrorism in Nigeria, no doubt about it. And Christians have often borne the brunt of it, but are not the only victims. Everybody in Nigeria, including all non-Muslims and including Muslims as well, have been victims of this menace. The federal government hasn't done enough. They should do more, but they're not responsible for the problem themselves. They haven't caused it. Trump's approach and threats appear to be a classic Western style divide and rule strategy. See a problem, take advantage of it, divide the population, and move in and control them and their resources. What we have is a national emergency. It requires a national solution to protect all Nigerians who are not involved in the criminalities. It is not an opportunity to pitch Nigerians against one another and develop us in a war based on religion. Trump's approach appears to be opportunistic and insincere because he's trying to mask American self-interest as philanthropy. If Trump is sincere and interested about helping Christians in Nigeria, he has to work with the government of Nigeria, give them the assistance they need to stop terrorism, and make sure that American organizations are not involved directly or indirectly, in fomenting and perpetuating this problem by sponsoring terrorists. If Trump is sincere, he should care about all Nigerians and not attempt to divide the country along the lines of religion.